The lights in my house should have been off. That was the first thing my brain, hazy with jet lag from a 14-hour flight from Tokyo, registered as my Uber drove up the winding gravel road that led to my property. It was 2 in the morning in Portland, Oregon. The surrounding pine forest was immersed in that absolute, silent darkness I had paid $2 million to secure. My house, a modern glass and steel structure I designed myself, should have been a black, dormant monolith awaiting its master's return. I had programmed the home automation system to keep everything off until my phone crossed the geo-fenced perimeter of the entrance. But it wasn't dark. The house glowed like an unholy Christmas tree in the middle of the forest. Amber lights pulsed in every ground floor window. The landscape lighting, which I rarely used so as not to disturb the wildlife, was on full blast, bathing the rhododendrons and ferns in an aggressive artificial glow. And there was music. Even through the SUV's double-paned glass and my house's sound insulation, I could feel the deep bass thrum of generic pop music reverberating against the ancient trees. "Looks like someone's having a party, sir," the driver commented, slowing down, doubt clear in his voice. "Do you want me to wait here? Maybe call someone?" I gripped the handle of my leather duffel bag so tightly my knuckles turned white. "No," I replied, my voice calmer than I felt. "Just drop me at the entrance. I'll handle it." I got out of the car. The cold, damp Pacific Northwest night air should have been invigorating, the scent of pine and wet earth that I had dreamed of smelling for 2 weeks trapped in sterile meeting rooms in Japan. But the air was tainted. There was the smell of menthol cigarette smoke, and there was something else visually disturbing. A U-Haul moving truck parked crookedly on my native landscaping lawn, crushing a lavender bed that had taken me months to cultivate. The truck was empty, its rear door gaping open like a hungry mouth that had already swallowed everything it wanted. I walked to the front door. My heart wasn't pounding with fear. It was beating with the slow, heavy rhythm of an ancient anger. An anger I had known since I was 7, when I realized that in the Miller family hierarchy, I was the spare part, and my sister, Bella, was the crown jewel. I typed the code into the smart lock. Error. I typed it again. Error. I pulled out my phone to open the security app. Access denied. Credentials revoked by primary administrator. I paused. The night chill permeated my wool coat, but it wasn't the weather that froze me. Primary administrator? I was the only administrator. I designed the system. Unless I remembered the physical key. The emergency key I hid inside a fake rock near the foundation, an analog redundancy for digital failures. My parents knew where it was. I showed them 3 years ago, when I bought the land, in a moment of weakness and desire for approval that now seemed pathetic. "For emergencies," I had said, "in case I fall off the roof or something." I went to the rock. It was there, but the key was gone. I knocked on the door. It wasn't a polite knock. It was the sound of the homeowner. I pounded on the solid walnut wood with my closed fist. "Open up!" I shouted. The music abruptly stopped. I heard footsteps, shuffling footsteps, not of someone afraid, but of someone annoyed at being interrupted. The door opened, and there she was. Bella, my younger sister, the 29-year-old golden child who never held a job for more than 6 months, wearing my Italian silk bathrobe, a gift from a client, and holding a glass of my most expensive red wine, a Cabernet I had been saving for my 35th birthday. She blinked, her smudged makeup eyes trying to focus. When she recognized me, she showed no fear, no shame. She smiled. That lazy, entitled smile she'd worn since childhood, when she broke my toys and knew Dad would buy her new ones and tell me to shut up. "Jason," she said, her voice slurred, "you're back early. Mom said you'd be in Asia until the end of the month." "What are you doing here, Bella?" I asked, stepping into the house. She tried to block my way, but I pushed past her, nudging her slightly with my bag. What I saw in the entryway made my stomach churn. My minimalist home, my sanctuary of clean lines and uncluttered surfaces, looked like it had been vandalized by a tornado of bad taste. Cardboard boxes were piled everywhere. My modern sculptures had been pushed into corners to make way for pink velvet poofs and lava lamps. The smell of cheap incense and vanilla vape permeated the air, suffocating the natural wood aroma of the house. "What is all this?" I pointed at the boxes. "Why did you change my door code? Where's my living room furniture?" Bella closed the door behind us and took a sip of wine, leaning against the wall with a casualness that bordered on sociopathy. "Your furniture? Oh, those uncomfortable metal chairs. Dad had them taken to storage. They were too cold, Jason. This house needs warmth. It needs feminine energy." I froze. The world spun a little. "Storage? You sent my designer furniture to storage?" "We're redecorating," she corrected, as if talking to a slow child. "Look, Jason, I know it's awkward you showing up unannounced like this, but, well, now that I'm living here, we need to talk about boundaries. You can't just show up." I let out a laugh. It was a short, dry, humorless sound. "Living here? Bella, you have exactly 10 minutes to grab your pink velvet boxes, get in that truck out there, and get off my property before I throw you in the snow." She sighed, rolling her eyes. "Oh my God, here comes the drama. Mom said you'd react like this. Jason's territorial," she said. "But relax, okay? It's all settled. Dad signed the papers yesterday." "What papers?" "The house papers, silly," she smiled, walking into the kitchen, my immaculate kitchen, now covered in dirty dishes and pizza boxes. "They decided to give me the house, as a fresh start gift. You know, after my breakup with Tyler, I needed a place to heal. And you, well, you're always traveling, Jason. You have that apartment in Seattle you hardly use." "You don't necessitate 5 bedrooms in the middle of nowhere. It's selfish." I stood still, the buzzing in me a year bow louder. "They gave you my house?" "Technically, they transferred the title," she said, picking up a slice of cold pizza. "Dad used that power of attorney you signed when you went to Dubai 3 years ago. He said it was easier that way to avoid taxes or something. I don't understand the boring details. I just know the house is mine now. So, if you want to stay in the guest room for one night, that's fine. But you'll have to move your clothes out of the master closet tomorrow because I need space for my faux fur coats." The power of attorney. The memory hit me like a physical punch. 3 years ago, when I went to work on a massive project in the Middle East, I left a limited power of attorney with my father, Richard, so he could handle some local banking bureaucracy if I became unreachable. I had revoked it by email when I returned, but had I formalized the revocation at the notary? My negligence, based on lingering filial trust, had just turned into a weapon pointed at my head. They hadn't just invaded, they had stolen, legally stolen, or at least tried to create a legal facade for the theft. I looked at Bella. She wasn't just an intruder. She was the final symptom of a family disease I had been trying to ignore for decades. My parents, Richard and Linda, always thought my success was, by extension, their success. That my money was family money, and that Bella, the eternal victim of her own bad choices, was entitled to a slice of my pie simply because she existed. "You think this house is yours," I said, very calmly. "It is mine," she asserted, licking tomato sauce from her finger. "I have the key, I have the code, and I have our parents' blessing. Accept it, Jason. You lost. Now, be a good brother and go get more wine from the cellar. This one's empty." I didn't go get wine. I went to the living room, took my cell phone from my pocket. My hand didn't tremble. The anger had crystallized into something cold and sharp, like the glass of the windows surrounding us. I dialed 3 numbers. 911. "What are you doing?" Bella asked, stopping chewing. "Who are you calling? Mom? There's no point crying to her, Jason. It was her idea." 911, what's your emergency? The dispatcher's voice sounded in my ear. "I'd like to report an ongoing home invasion," I said. "I'm at 4500 Skyline Boulevard. I just arrived from a trip and found an intruder in my house. She's agitated, possibly intoxicated, and refuses to leave." "Jason!" Bella screamed, the pizza falling from her hand. "Are you crazy? Hang up. I'm your sister." "Do you know the intruder?" the dispatcher asked. "It's a woman who claims to be my sister," I replied coldly, "but she has no authorization to be here. She broke in, changed the locks, and is destroying the property. I fear for my safety. She seems unstable. We're sending a squad car. Are you in a safe location?" "I'm in the living room. She's in the kitchen." I hung up. Bella was gaping. "The initial shock gave way to a mad, childish fury. She threw the wine glass al floor. The crystal shattered, the dark liquid staining the white oak floor I had imported from Scandinavia." "You called the police on me?" she shrieked, her voice shrill. "You're going to regret this, Jason. Dad's going to destroy you. This house is mine. They said it was mine." "You can tell that to the sheriff," I replied, sitting on one of her cardboard boxes, crossing my legs. "While we wait, I suggest you start thinking about a good lawyer. Because the power of attorney Dad used, it was specific to banking transactions under $10,000. If he tried to transfer a $2 million deed with that, he didn't just make a family mistake, Bella. He committed federal fraud." The color drained from her face. "They wouldn't do that," she whispered, doubt beginning to corrode her arrogant certainty. "They said it was all okay. Mom said, 'Here, darling, it's your new castle.' They wouldn't lie to me." "They lie to all of us, Bella," I said, looking at the glass shards on the floor. "The difference is I stopped believing their lies at 16. You still live in them at 29. She picked up her phone, her hands trembling so much she could barely dial. "I'm calling them. They're coming here now. They'll put you in your place." "Great," I said. "Send them over. The party's just starting." 20 minutes later, the light show at my driveway increased. Flashing blue and red lights reflected off the snow and trees, creating a nightmarish strobe effect. 2 county police cars pulled up the ramp, followed closely by a black Mercedes I knew well. My parents. They must have been staying at the resort hotel in the valley, probably celebrating the generous donation they made with my assets. The door opened before I could even stand up. 2 police officers entered, hands on their holsters, cautious. And right behind them, pushing past the officers as if they were servants, came Richard and Linda Miller. My mother was wearing a fur coat, probably fake but expensive, and my father had that red face of someone who drank too much whiskey and is used to yelling at waiters. Where is he? Where's that ingrate? Sir, step back, one of the officers ordered, raising his hand. We're responding to a home invasion call. There's no invasion, my mother screamed, rushing to hug Bella, who was now crying copiously on the sofa, playing the helpless victim role with Oscar-worthy perfection. I stood up slowly. The exhaustion from the flight had vanished, replaced by a cold, calculating adrenaline. I was an architect. I built structures that withstood earthquakes. I knew how to find the failure point in any foundation. And my family's foundation was about to collapse. Good evening, officers, I said, keeping my hands visible and my voice calm. My name is Jason Miller. I am the sole owner of this residence. Eu tenho o Digital Deed no meu celular, assim como Property Tax Payment Records e construção histórica. Eu pontei a Bella e meus pais. Desses pessoas invadiram minha casa enquanto eu estava fora do país por trabalho, deixaram as locks, danificaram minha propriedade e agora recusam-se a sair. Lie, meu father shoutou, puxando um crumpled paper do seu suit jacket pocket. Eu tenho transferência aqui. Eu sou seu legal proxy. Eu transferi a propriedade para Isabella Miller Nedoya Yester Morning. É legal. It's all ours. O older officer, um sargento com um rosto que havia visto muitas disputas domésticas, tomou o papel do pai da mão. Ele ternou a sua lanterna e leu por alguns segundos. Depois, ele olhou para mim, depois, atrás do meu pai. Sir, o sargento disse ao meu pai, This is a photocopy of a power of attorney document dated 2021. E down here, in clause 4, it explicitly states, valid only for banking transactions in the Wells Fargo checking account. Da silêncio que caiu na sala foi absoluto. Even Bella's crying stopped. What? Meu father blincou confuso. Não, the lawyer said... Você não consultou um lawyer, Dad. Eu interrompi. Você usou o Google. Você downloaded um template da internet e achou que porque eu sou seu filho, eu não ia ler as finas letrinhas. Ou pior, você achou que eu não teria os gatos de te chamar. Eu fui até que estava face a face com ele. Richard Miller era um grande homem, mas naquele momento ele parecia se encolher. Você tentou roubar minha casa, Dad. Uma casa de $2 milhões. This isn't a family dispute. This is grand theft. It's document fraud. It's a crime. We're your parents, minha mãe exclamou, saindo de trás de Bella. We gave you life. Everything you have is ours. How dare you be so petty? Bella needs this house. She's pregnant. The bomb dropped in the room. Eu olhei para Bella. Ela olhou abaixo, batendo a língua. Pregnant? Eu repeti. Yes, Mum continuou, triunfante, achando que havia encontrado o trunfo emocional. She's having a baby. She needs stability, fresh air. Você é single, Jason. What do you need all this for? It's obscene. We made an executive decision as a family. Family comunismo, Jason. Whoever has more gives to whoever needs. Family comunismo, eu repeti, tastando a bítera ironia. Funny, quando eu estava em college e necessitava dinheiro para livros, você disse que era wild capitalism e eu precisava aprender a fender por mim mesma. Quando Bella crashou seu carro, você deu-lhe um novo carro. Agora que ela está, se isso é verdade, você acha que meus ativos são seu fundo de caridade. Eu virei para o sargento. Officer, quero que os removam. Agora. Se eles têm um papel fraudulento, isso será resolvido em corte. Mas, por enquanto, o título público está ainda em meu nome. Deles são 3 pastores. Is that true, sir? O sargento perguntou a meu pai. Did you register this transfer at the county recorder's office? Meu pai estamerou. The office was closed. It was a holiday. We were going on Monday. Then, the house is still his, the sergeant concluded, handing back the useless paper. Gentlemen, madame, you need to leave, now, or you will be arrested for trespassing. You can't do that! Bella screamed, getting up from the couch. "I've already unpacked. I have nowhere to go. My apartment rent expired and I didn't renew." "That sounds like a personal problem, Bella," I said. "Maybe you can stay in Mom and Dad's hotel room. I'm sure they'll love family communism and a double room." "I will destroy you," my father hissed, his face purple with rage as the officer guided him by the arm towards the door. "You're dead to me, Jason. Do you hear? You don't have a father anymore." "I haven't had a father for a long time, Richard," I replied. "I just had a creditor, and the debt is paid." They were escorted out. The image was pathetic and grandiose at the same time. My mother crying and cursing my name, Bella dragging her fringed purse and screaming that she felt sick, and my father threatening to sue the entire police department. When the door finally closed and the silence of the forest reigned again, I felt no relief. I felt exhaustion, a deep, bone-deep exhaustion. I looked at my living room. It was destroyed. The wine on the floor, the boxes, her smell. I walked to the kitchen, grabbed a black trash bag, and started throwing her things inside. The incenses, the scattered clothes, the tacky decorations. I wasn't going to wait until tomorrow. I was going to purge my house now. But as I cleaned, a doubt began to grow in my mind. That paper my father showed, the power of attorney? He said, the lawyer said. My father was arrogant, but he wasn't stupid enough to forge a deed by himself. Someone helped him. Someone told him it would work. I went to the paper the police officer had dropped on the coffee table. I smoothed the edges. There was a stamp on the back, a notary public stamp. Marcus Henderson, notary. I knew that name. He was my father's best friend, the man he golfed with every Sunday. They hadn't just tried to use an old document. They had conspired to forge a current validation. This wasn't just a delusion of grandeur from my parents. It was an organized criminal conspiracy. And if they went that far for a house, what else had they done? I remembered my investments, the accounts I kept at the same bank as them for convenience, the family safe where I kept my old savings bonds. I rushed to my upstairs office, the only room that was locked with a biometric key and that Bella hadn't managed to break into. I entered, turned on my main computer, and started typing furiously, accessing my credit reports and deep bank statements. What I saw on the screen made the attempted house theft look like child's play. The house was just the tip of the iceberg. They weren't just trying to put a roof over Bella's head. They were trying to liquidate my assets to cover something much, much bigger. There were loans, massive loans, made in my name using my identity, dating back months. And the destination of the money wasn't Bella's account. The money was going to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands. My office landline rang, a jarring sound in the pre-dawn silence. No one called the landline, only a security system. I answered. "Jason?" The voice was whispered, trembling. It was Bella. She must have secretly taken Sir Mom's phone in the car. "What do you want, Bella? Haven't you caused enough damage?" "You need to get out of there," she said, and for the first time in her life, she didn't sound like the spoiled sister. She sounded terrified. "Jason, listen to me. They're not just mad about the house. They're desperate. Dad, he owes money to bad people, Jason. Very bad people. The house wasn't for me. They were going to transfer it to my name, to mortgage it and pay the debt tomorrow. If they don't pay," she sobbed. "If they don't pay, they said they'd come after the family's most valuable asset." I looked at my office's glass window, at the darkness of the forest outside. Where before I saw peace, now I saw vulnerability. I was a fish in a lit aquarium. What are you saying, Bella? I'm saying the house isn't safe, Jason. Those men, they know where you live. Dad gave them the address as collateral. A sound of breaking glass came from downstairs. It wasn't a wine glass this time. It was the back door. I hung up the phone, turned off the office light, and for the first time that night, I was thankful I had hidden not just a key in the fake rock, but a Glock 19 in my office safe. Bella's invasion was just a distraction. The real war had just begun. The sound of shattering glass downstairs was not just a noise. It was the final violation of my sanctuary. In the oppressive silence of the Oregon forest, the sound was like a cannon shot. I squeezed the grip of the Glock 19 with a sweaty hand, feeling the cold weight of the metal anchor my fragmented reality. Bella had hung up, but the echo of her warning still reverberated in my skull. They will come after the most valuable asset. I was not a soldier. I was an architect. My hands were made to draw straight lines and calculate structural loads, not to take lives. But as I slipped out of the office and crept along the second-floor hallway, I realized that architecture and war were not so different. Both dealt with protecting what was inside and keeping what was dangerous out. And my fortress had just been breached. I looked down through the tempered glass railing that overlooked the double-height living room. The emergency garden lighting cast long, distorted shadows inside the house. I saw two silhouettes, men, large, dressed in dark, functional clothing. They didn't look like opportunistic thieves seeking jewelry. They moved with purpose. One of them kicked one of Bella's moving boxes, scattering clothes across the floor, while the other walked towards the stairs, holding something that gleamed metallic in the dim light, a crowbar or something worse. "Richard said the key would be in the rock," one of them growled, his deep voice rising to me. "Lying piece of shit." "It doesn't matter," the other replied. "The deed is signed. The house is collateral. Let's clear the place and change the locks before the bank wakes up." They weren't hitmen. They were enforcers. Underworld debt collectors operating the gray area into illegal foreclosures in pure extortion. My father hadn't just mortgaged the house. He had handed it directly to loan sharks as payment for a debt whose magnitude I couldn't even imagine. I took a deep breath, trying to calm the tachycardia that made my ribs ache. I had the advantage of height and terrain. I knew every creak of this floor. I designed the acoustics so that sound traveled from bottom to top, not the other way around. "Stop!" I shouted, my voice projected to fill the empty space of the room. "I'm armed, and the police are on their way." The two figures froze. The man at the bottom of the stairs looked up, trying to locate me in the darkness of the mezzanine. "Mr. Miller?" he asked, with unsettling calm. "Jason Miller?" "Get out of my house," I ordered, raising the gun, though I knew they couldn't see the barrel in the darkness. "Now." "Look, kid, we don't want trouble," the man said, raising his hands in a gesture of false surrender, but continuing to climb the first step. "Your father, Richard, gave us possession of this property at 6 p.m. today as liquidation of a promissory note. We have the paperwork. You're the one trespassing." The audacity of the lie made me laugh, a nervous, sharp sound. My father doesn't own it. The police just left here confirming that. If you take one more step, I will shoot." The man stopped. He looked at his companion. There was a silent communication between them, a risk assessment. They were predators, but they weren't stupid. Breaking into an empty house was business. Exchanging fire with an armed, entrenched homeowner was an unnecessary liability. "Old Richard screwed us, Tony," the second man said, spitting on my imported oak floor. He said the place was empty and clear. "Let's go," the first one said, backing away slowly, without taking his eyes off the top of the stairs. "But listen closely, Jason Miller. That debt doesn't disappear just because you have a gun. Your father borrowed money from people who don't take no for an answer. If the house doesn't cover it, he'll pay with something else, maybe with his knees." They turned and exited through the hole they had made in the back glass door. I heard the sound of a powerful engine roaring on the dirt road seconds later. I collapsed onto the hallway floor, the gun slipping from my trembling fingers. Cold sweat drenched my shirt. I hadn't fired, but I felt as if I had run a marathon. The office phone rang again. I rushed to answer. It was the 911 dispatcher. The police were coming back. The silent alarm system, which I reactivated remotely the moment I entered the office, had gone off when the glass broke. "They're gone," I said, my voice hoarse. But it wasn't a common robbery. They were collectors. My father sent them. The next few hours were a blur of blue lights, testimonies, and forensic technicians taking photos of the broken glass and muddy footprints. The sergeant who had kicked out my parents earlier returned with a much grimmer expression. He listened to my account, looked at the banking documents I had printed, and shook his head. "This is big, Mr. Miller," he said, closing his notepad. "This isn't local jurisdiction. International banking fraud, money laundering, involvement with organized crime. I'll have to notify the Portland FBI, and we need to find your parents, now." They didn't have to look far. At 5 in the morning, as I sat in the kitchen drinking black coffee and looking at the gaping hole in my door, temporarily covered with plywood, my cell phone rang. It was Bella. "They're at the hospital," she sobbed. "Jason, please, come." I drove to St. Vincent Hospital with a sense of unreality. The sun was rising over the hills, painting the sky pink and gold, a beauty indifferent to the chaos of my life. I found Bella in the emergency waiting room. She looked small, huddled in an orange plastic chair, still wearing the extravagant clothes from the night before, now rumpled and stained with mascara. When she saw me, she ran and hugged me. I hesitated, my body stiff, but eventually patted her back awkwardly. The anger was still there, but it was being eclipsed by the gravity of the situation. "What happened?" I asked. "Dad tried to flee," she said, wiping her nose. "After we left your house, he went crazy. He got a call, I think from those men. He said we needed to go to the airport, catch the first flight to Mexico. Mom was crying, trying to wrestle the steering wheel from his hand. They crashed the car on I-5, flipped over." I closed my eyes. "Are they alive?" "Mom broke her collarbone and a few ribs. She's sedated," Bella said, trembling. Dad's in surgery, internal bleeding, but the police are at his room door, Jason. They say he's arrested." I walked to the hospital coffee machine. The liquid was terrible, tasting of burnt plastic, but I needed the caffeine to process the new reality. My parents weren't just greedy narcissists. They were desperate criminals. I sat next to Bella. Tell me everything, and don't lie. If you lie about 1 comma, I'm getting up and leaving and letting you deal with the feds alone. Bella took a deep breath. It started 2 years ago. Dad invested in a cryptocurrency scheme. He thought he was a genius, that he would triple the family's wealth. He lost everything, Jason. Their savings, their house, everything. He didn't want to tell you because, you know, his pride. He couldn't bear for his cold, distant son to save him. So he borrowed money from loan sharks. Worse, she whispered. He started laundering money to try and recover the losses, using Grandma's old accounts, using my name, and lately, using yours. He said it was temporary, that as soon as the big deal went through, he'd pay everything back and no one would know. And my house? It was the last card. The men gave him an ultimatum yesterday. Pay $2 million by midnight, or we'll take your daughter. He offered your house to save me, Jason. He forged the transfer to my name so he could give the house as clean collateral to them, since they couldn't take something in your name without raising immediate federal suspicions. If it was in my name, it would be a private transaction. I looked at her, the favorite daughter, the princess. He didn't give you the house because he loved you, Bella, I said brutally. He gave you the house to turn you into a human shield. If the loan sharks came to take the property, they'd find you, not him. He put the target on your back. Bella started crying again, but this time it was a different cry. It was the cry of someone whose fundamental illusion had been shattered. I know, she sobbed. I realized in the car when he told me to shut up and stop crying because it was my fault for spending too much. He never protected me. He just used me. We sat in silence for a long time. The hum of the fluorescent lights seemed like the sound of our childhood disintegrating. And the pregnancy? I asked. Bella looked down. It's true. 8 weeks. But the father isn't Prince Charming. He's a bartender I met 2 months ago. I'm alone, Jason. Completely alone. I looked at my sister. I saw the smudged makeup, the bitten nails, the fear in her eyes. I saw the girl who was spoiled to incompetence, raised to be a decorative pet, and then sacrificed when the bill came. I had hated her for years, hated how she got everything easy. But now, seeing the shipwreck her life was, I realized that my parents' favoritism was the greatest curse they could have cast upon her. They gave me neglect, which forced me to be strong and independent. To her, they gave dependence, which left her helpless. You're not alone, I said, and regretted it the moment the words came out, but I knew they were true. But the rules have changed, Bella. Dad's bank went bust, and Jason's bank has sky-high interest rates. What do you mean? I mean, I'm going to pay for a lawyer for you, not to defend you from the frauds. You'll have to cooperate with the FBI and tell everything you know to get immunity, but to ensure you don't go to jail for what they did. And I'll help you with the baby. But you work. You'll finish that graphic design college you dropped out of, and you'll never, ever ask them for anything again. She nodded frantically. I promise, I'll do anything. 2 days later, the FBI knocked on my door. They didn't need to break in. I invited them in. I handed over the flash drive with my bank statements. I handed over the security camera recordings. I handed over the fake key my father had made. I cooperated fully. It was the end of Richard and Linda Miller. The investigation revealed a web of fraud that went far beyond my house. There were Ponzi schemes, tax evasion, and association with an Eastern European criminal organization operating money laundering in Seattle. My father wasn't just a victim of bad choices. He was an active and arrogant participant who thought he was smarter than the system. He survived surgery, only to be handcuffed to his hospital bed. My mother, once discharged, was taken into custody. I visited them once, before the trial. They were in a temporary detention room, separated by glass. My mother cried, begging forgiveness, saying they did everything for the family. I just looked at her and said, "Family doesn't steal their children's future to pay for past vices." My father, he didn't cry. He looked at me with hatred. "You're a traitor," he hissed through the intercom. "Turned in your own blood to the police. You should have helped us. You have millions. You could have paid the debt, and everything would be fine." "2 million wouldn't have paid the debt, Richard," I replied coldly, "because your debt wasn't financial, it was moral, and that you don't have the balance to pay." I stood up and left. It was the last time I saw his face without it being on a news screen. 6 months passed. The snow melted in Portland, revealing the vibrant green of spring, but I wasn't there to see it. I sold the house. I couldn't stay there. Even after cleaning, redecorating, and replacing the entire security system, the house felt contaminated. Every time I looked at the stairs, I saw the loan shark's thugs. Every time I looked at the kitchen, I saw Bella eating pizza and acting like she owned my world. The architecture was perfect, but the house's soul was rotten. I sold it to a couple of Californian doctors who found the invasion story a quaint small-town charm. I profited $500,000 from the sale. I used the money to buy a penthouse apartment in downtown Seattle with 24-hour concierge and armed security. And I used the rest to set up a trust fund for my niece, who was born last month. The fund is locked. Bella cannot touch the principal, only receive a modest monthly allowance conditioned on proof of employment and clean toxicology tests. Is it control? Perhaps, but it's the only kind of love I know how to give now. The love that protects through boundaries, not excesses. Bella is living in a small apartment whose rent I pay. She works at the reception of an art gallery. She's tired, has dark circles under her eyes from being a new mother, and complains that money is tight. But for the first time in her life, she seems real. When I visit her, she's not performing the perfect daughter. She's just surviving, and in that, I found a sister I can respect. Yesterday, I received a letter from federal prison. It was from my father. I didn't open it. I threw it into my apartment's electric fireplace and watched the paper burn. The digital flames don't warm, but seeing that handwriting disappear brought a genuine warmth to my chest. They tried to steal my house, my assets, and my security. They thought I was just a walking bank account, but they forgot the most basic lesson of architecture. If you try to remove the main supporting column to sell the material, the roof falls on your own head. I survived the rubble.
They were buried. And you, what would you do if you found out your parents saw you not as a child, but as an insurance policy to be cashed in? Would you forgive in the name of blood or cut ties to stop the bleeding? If this story of betrayal and justice resonated with you, subscribe to the channel. Share your opinion. Did Bella deserve a second chance, or was I too soft? Remember, your home is your castle. but make sure you're the one with the keys to the gate. You are stronger than you think.